Welcome to Understanding the Why. Today's topic is speed training. We're going to start with the question, what is speed training exactly? And then we're going to continue with the goals and the resulting of them. We're going to talk about the structure of a training session, including the dosage. We're going to talk about the technique and the most common mistakes while sprinting, as well testings, progression variations, gadgets, and a little bit more. First of all, what is speed training? In the context of K2, speed training refers to straight line speed. That means the combination of acceleration, transition, and top speed. It is not conditioning, we will talk about that later, and it is not change of direction, including deceleration in this context. So it's from a starting position to full speed without speed reducing elements like clear change of direction. Why we do it? There are usually goals if we do something. In this case, mostly it's to improve acceleration and or top speed. Sometimes the goals are a little bit more specific. For example, we want to improve our 40-yard dash, or it could be as a preparation for change of directions, since speed is kind of a basic skill that we need to have also for change of direction. The goals in the end determine the dosage. In case of sprinting, this means an intensity of at least 90%, which doesn't equal effort, but we're going to talk about it a little bit later. And also, to ensure this intensity, this high intensity, we have to rest until we're quote-unquote fully recovered. In the end, the dosage will lead to physical adaptations, for example, intermuscular coordination or improved muscle fiber recruitment, just to name a few. A K2 speed training session is usually structured in a simple but effective way, and it's depending on the point of time. For example, it's different if it's off-season, pre-season, or in-season, and it's also depending on the position group. Skill, or big personal. Starting with a warm-up to increase heart rate and body temperature, moving within the necessary range of motion, and also priming the central nervous system. Starting with usually some kind of technique drill. This could be a 40-yard dash sense and start, or some kind of drill to improve or optimize leaning angle, ankle stiffness, or coordination like wall drills or skips. Sprinting, of course, the most important part. There's always, or depending on the phase, some kind of acceleration and or transition and or top speed. Let's talk about dosage. So the dosage for sprinting, as I already said, is a high intensity, at least 90%. And why intensity doesn't equal effort, I'm going to talk about it in a second. To ensure this high intensity, we have to have a lot of rest. You can take 1 minute of rest per 10 meters of sprinting as a rule of thumb. If you calculate it, this equals a work to rest ratio of 1 to 30. So for every second that you work, you rest 30 seconds. The volume is kind of depending of the content of the session. So if we take a look at the second point, it's 120 to 240 meters per session. The lower end, so more like 120 meters if you focus more on acceleration, and 240 more if you focus on top end speed. The sprints themselves usually are within 5 to 60 meters. It's not really useful to sprint, or you can't really call it a sprint, but to do it for less than 5 meters. And in the case of American football, more than 60 meters is also kind of rare, so we're not going to implement it on a regular basis. Within the week, this should be somewhere in between 1 to 3 sessions. Now the difference or the comparison to conditioning, in this case, some kind of interval conditioning. The intensity for conditioning depends on the heart rate zone, on the goal. But if we think about heart rate zone 4 to 5, which would be 80 to 90 or to 100% of your maximum heart rate, this means if you take a sprint and you're doing, for example, 4 sprints of 40 yards, you want to have almost the same times, the same sprint times for all 4 sprints, and therefore rest enough. In this case, for some kind of 4 minutes or something like this. The effort in this case is always, for example, 100%. If we compare it to conditioning, we're going to take the same 4 sprints, 40 yards, but with way less rest. Then the intensity is going to decrease. That means your sprinting times will reduce, even though your effort is going to be on the top end still. Rest is depending on the type of conditioning, but usually it's a work to rest ratio of 1 to 1 or even lower, and up to 1 to 4. So your rest is around the same as your sprinting or conditioning task, or you have a little bit more rest, but not even close as much rest as when you sprint. The volume in this case is a little bit less relevant, at least for this comparison. Now, a few short words about power versus capacity, if you ever stumble upon these words. Power usually means a focus on max intensity in every rep, and therefore there's more rest needed. In this case, this would kind of equal to sprint training. If we compare it to capacity, this focuses usually on sustaining as high as of an intensity as possible over a certain period, which goes more towards the conditioning side. While also within conditioning you can focus more on capacity or on power intervals. Now, technique and most common mistakes. We're going to start with the 40-yard dash stance. First of all, it is very, very individual, also depending on body type and body composition, etc. But here we're going to talk about the most common tips and tricks. A very important one, in my opinion, is the weight shift. And you're going to shift the weight on your front hand and front foot. So the back foot is going to be very light. It's more like a stabilizer, like another wheel on the ground, but not really having pressure on it. Your shin angle in front should be 45 degrees. And to be honest, if we look at Mr. Worthy here, this doesn't seem to be optimal, but as you can see in a second, he still runs an unbelievable time. So as always, things can differ. Hips are usually higher than the shoulders. Eyes are to the ground, so don't look in front because you will get way faster upright than you want to. The arm in the air, elbow is bent to 90 degrees and the hand is on the side at the pocket. And this is what the sprint in the end should look like. Here's a great picture of a track athlete with the most important, or some of the most important points on one picture. As you can perfectly see here, the acceleration angle in the end should be around 45 degrees, and usually the acceleration angle is close to the angle that you have when starting, the shin angle, or not the starting but the stance. Now the start. You're pushing off your front foot. Again, your back foot is very light on the ground, and you're going to drive your back leg to the front with a low heel recovery, which means you're having just a little bit of space between your back foot and the ground. So you're almost dragging your toes over the ground. Important, don't overemphasize or don't overextend the hips and overswing the arm, because that could lead to an early upright posture that could be suboptimal. You of course have to extend. A triple extension would be perfect, but not overextending. The first step should be in front of the starting line, but not too much in front, because otherwise your shin angle will be too upright. You again want to have something about around 45 degrees there. For the acceleration, keep your eyes low, because if you look to the front you will get more upright, and you usually want to stay in the acceleration phase for around 10, 15, 20 meters if possible. You're focusing on driving your body. This means pushing forward, pushing into the ground. If you want to compare to some speed drills, this would be the A-skips or also wall drills. Transition, the only thing I would like to say here is keep your focus on acceleration as long as possible, because most of you will automatically get upright and transition. Top speed, think about grabbing the turf in front of you with your toes and pulling yourself forward. Again here, this would be B-skips if we take a look at sprinting drills. For the analysis, we're going to use the 40-yard dash testing video. And we're going to start here. I'm starting here, 10 yards, 20 yards, 40 yards. When analyzing, at least, or when testing, that's a better word, we're going to time the 10-yard split, which is the time from start to 10 meters, or 10 yards in this case, to have a number referring to the acceleration. Then we're timing from the 20 yards to the 40 yards, which is the so-called flying 20, which is something to talk about the top speed. And if you want to have acceleration, transition and top speed combined, we have the whole 40-yard dash time. Now a few last words to progressions, additions, sketches, etc. First of all, with everything we're talking about in a second, we always want to keep our speed within 10% of our maximum to ensure speed mechanics. It's not going to be effective if our speed mechanics alter or differ from our usual speed mechanics. Some kind of progression or addition could be overspeed. This means that we're going to reach faster speeds than usual. Obviously we need some kind of help to achieve that. In this case, for example, getting pulled to the front by bands or other athletes. We can also do the opposite, which would be underspeed. In this case, this will be sprinting with zero assistance. For example, sleds, parachutes or bands. And there are a ton of other gadgets that could be used, but in the end we have to stick to the basics, which is sprinting itself, and all of these are nice to have, but by far not essential. Injury prevention is another big topic. In sprinting there's often the hamstring tear that comes to our minds first. We're going to talk about injury prevention and also injury prevention while sprinting in a different Understanding the Why video.